Good day, viewers, and welcome to 30 Minutes, the Trust Television's interactive program. And with me today is the former governor of Cross River State, Mr. Donald Duke, who was also twice a presidential aspirant under two different political parties. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. We quite appreciate you being here. I know you are still mulling whether to be an aspirant again or you are, put that aside, you are just going to participate in the whole process running up to this next round of election in 2023.
No, I'm not mulling about running. I'm not, at least as of this time, I'm not in the race. What my concern and passion really is to ensure that we put our best foot forward. Analyzing the country as it is today, I don't think we have the luxury of another failure. I'm not saying categorically that the current administration has failed, but I think largely, and they themselves would admit, they probably haven't met the aspirations or what was expected of them, particularly in the areas of security and in the economy. So I'm hoping that this time around, regardless, and I hope it's of course my party, PDP, that we can find a candidate that will unify the country and deal with the issues that are burgeoning on us, and staring us in the face. We're actually at the precipice, so we've got to make it work.
Where do you stand in this debate of zoning or no zoning? And at the moment, will you support a candidate or an aspirant from the northern part of the country in your own party, the PDP?
I made a statement. I said, my focus now is getting a good candidate to run the party. But you can find good candidates anywhere. It's not limited to any particular zone. It's further complicated by the traditions of the party. So for instance, in 99, when we started this republic, Obasanjo, and I'm talking about the PDP now, Obasanjo as president had 4 chairmen, and they all came from the northern parts. So you had Solomon La, Audu Ogbe, Gamade, and Amadu Ali. With the advent of Yaradua, you had Ogbolo Afo from Abia State. Then Jonathan, and we had Mohammed, Dr. Mohammed, we had Bamanga Tuku, and we had Moazu. So we've gone back and forth. Now, when Secondus was...
Uche
Secondus was
elected
party national chairman.
Yes.
It was expected at the time that the presidential candidate will come from the north, and that's what happened, and that's where Alhaji Atiku emerged. So if you follow that reasoning, the logical is to say, okay, now you have a northern chairman, so you should revert to the south. In politics, we use all sorts of analytics to achieve our ends.
But I hear
there's a school of thought
yes.
that says, well, we don't have the luxury of that now. Let's just get the best hand. And that's actually a strong school of thought. But there are others who have said, listen, if you've had 8 years of a president of northern extraction, and you have another 8 years, assuming, for instance, that there's a PDP victory, then you want to have another 8 years of a PDP president or president of northern extraction, so like 16
but
years.
The current president isn't from the PDP. That's
yes,
the argument I've had people say.
You see, there are all sorts of analytics that you can come up with. Some will say, look, Nigeria is bigger than all this, and the psyche of Nigerians and all that. Some have even said, okay, in the PDP, that if you go north, the southern members of the PDP would go in the other direction. What I think is this. I went to the Supreme Court to fight zoning because it's unconstitutional. So regardless of what you do, you can't really stop someone from running. But you can, if there is a convention, and the sooner we do this, the better,
That's a kind of gentleman's agreement. Right.
And it should be written within the party's constitution. Then we wouldn't have this. Because you see, at the end of the day, these things divide us, okay? I've heard arguments where they've said, people have said, listen, from 1999 to date, it's been lopsided in favor of the North, right? In favor of the South, I'm sorry, in favor of the South. You've had Obasanjo, you had Jonathan, so you have Obasanjo 8 years, Jonathan 6 years and all that. Yeah, that's fine. Others have said, well, Nigeria didn't start in 1999, it started in 1960. So if you put it all together, it's been more of Northern leadership. Either way, I agree that it's important that both various parts of the country can feel that aspiration and achieve their goals. But it shouldn't be at the expense of the nation itself. So,
but why is it that politicians or civilian rule, which has been on for more than 20 years now, has more or less presided over more of the divisions within Nigeria? Because things were not like this. When you went to Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, you could well have been to Calabar, University of Calabar, and stayed within your locality or in Lagos. But you went to Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. You didn't feel anything.
I went to Federal Government College, Sokoto.
Exactly.
I went to Federal Government
and
College,
Ilorin as well.
And I went to Ahmadu Bello University. So I can say that all my adult education in Nigeria were in the North, right?
So why is it that then your class has kind of failed in terms of building on that feeling of unity or nationhood? And at the end now we are just talking about North, South and all of that.
You know, honestly, it comes down to inadequacy. You know, and I've used this analogy several times. You can have a family of 10 children. They're very close. Same parents, they love each other, they play, but they're poor. The moment the food is served, that's when you know who the first child is. That's when you know who the first daughter is. That's when you know the last child. Because you've got to use what you've got to get what you want, right? But when there's enough for everyone, who cares where you come from, right?
Well, are you saying there isn't enough for everyone?
No. We have not built an economy that can encompass everyone. So people feel that by having their kith and kin in office or in authority, they have at least some hope that it's easier to reach. So if for instance, from Cross River, and I do business in Ministry of Petroleum, of course, you know, you want someone from my neck of the woods because he's more approachable to me than if it was someone from Sokoto. It's a fallacy. Experience has shown that it doesn't work. Even when you have a president I don't see how the presidency has really benefited Katsina State, even though they almost had back-to-back 2 years of Yaradua and almost 8 years of
Buhari.
I don't think Katsina has benefited exceptionally. Ogun State, all the southwestern presidents have come from Ogun State, Shonekon, and really hasn't benefited them in any way.
But why are you, the politicians, not communicating this enough? Most of the time you seem to be talking about where somebody comes from, not his ability or capabilities and all of that.
You must appreciate that politicians are largely opportunists, right? And very few seek the larger good. And I'm being honest now. Very few people in politics are seeking the larger welfare of society. There's a lot of self-service, and it's not unique to Nigeria. It's a global thing. We're human beings, regardless of skin color, race, whatever it is. It's very selfish, okay? So they're going to push someone whom they think they can have an advantage of, or who they think they can win the election for them. He's going to be in my party, even when you know that that person doesn't have the ability. Now, those who are pushing sectionalism, for instance, is self-serving. You know, there are those who will say, okay, let me give an example, and it's quite an interesting example. 4 or 5 gentlemen left PDP at a time. Alhaji Atiku, Kwankwaso, Saraki, Tambuwal, and I think Amici. And they ported to the APC. Fine. Freedom of movement.
Just so, like you also ported at SDP.
I ported to SDP.
Yes.
I called it sabbatical. I went on sabbatical.
Right.
Because I didn't think I was going to win an election, but I just wanted to, I was just angry at our failures. Why can't we make this thing work? Why are we behaving as if development, we're pioneers in development? Others, younger countries have developed faster. So I was a bit frustrated. Anyway, so they ported to APC, and in the process, they produced a Buhari. Not satisfied with that, they've come back to PDP. Then they say, okay, no more zoning. So I don't know. I can't champion zoning because I fought against it. I took when I defeated Jerry Gana in the primaries of SDP, he, incidentally, both of us supported from PDP.
Yes.
He went to court. And I took the case right to the Supreme Court and defeated him. So I'm not a champion for zoning. I'm a champion for good governance. But I also don't want to appear naive at the sensitivities of Nigeria. The important thing is that before you go in, let's state the rules clear. In the case of PDP, SDP with Jerry Gana, it was after I defeated him, he started shouting zoning. But if we went for screening together, we sat in the lounge together, we were cracking jokes together, then the primaries came, he was defeated and he shouted zoning. But if I shouldn't have been screened even in the first place if that had existed. So whatever the rules are, whatever the party agrees on, let it be known, and let's not play the rules as we go. Let's define the system well before.
So how will it be possible in the coming election for at least the two major parties, or even just your party now, the PDP, to be able to bring out the best when there's all this zoning, mediocrity, and lack of quality in the whole debate even?
You know, politics is largely conflict resolution. You're going to see a lot of conflicts and all that. But the ability to sit down and resolve them. And I must give PDP tremendous kudos in this regard. Look, we're a party in opposition. We're a party that was seen to be in disarray, and that's why we got into opposition. But look at the last convention. It went smoothly. We produced a national chairman who is highly regarded.
That is right? In the family way, for the family affair that you usually say.
And all that. There was a lot of rancor. Right. We don't forget that there was an issue of Uche Secondos being removed from office. There were those who wanted the chairmanship of the party to remain in the South because of what I told you earlier on, because where the chairman comes from the South or from one part of the country, the president will come from the other part. So there were a lot of interest. But at the end of the day, they were able to sit around and manage it and come up with a candidate without rancor. The other party, though, the governing party, that has not only the power, the moral suasion, has not been able to have a convention, and that's, that speaks volumes. If this, and after 8 years of President Buhari, it's easy for them to say, listen, the presidency is going to the South, or the presidency is going, but they've said nothing about it. So it's an uneasy calm in the APC. I think, yes, both parties have issues, but I think PDP's issues are far less than APC's.
I will take you up on this shortly after we come back from this break.
Thank you.
Viewers will go on a short break now and resume shortly.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes, yes. He phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
You know, Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think he will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party.
Here on the Mambila Plateau. And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the two parties will make an impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a 4th wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Welcome back to Trust Television's interactive program, 30 Minutes. And with me today is the former governor of Cross River State and former presidential aspirant, Mr. Donald Duke. So if I come back to you just before we went on break, you are trying to blame the APC for not zoning its presidential candidate to a certain part of the country, but they keep saying that zoning is a PDP affair, that they don't have zoning in their party. So why are you trying to export PDP problems into their
I
party?
like that. First of all, I think you misconstrued me. I didn't say that they haven't zoned. They are the ones going back and forth on zoning. Remember, there was a publication that stated that they had zoned. Then a few days after, the neck of the party refuted that. So they're the ones talking about zoning. Whether they zone or not is of no business of mine. My point I made at that, my statement was that they are unable to even carry out a convention. It's been postponed on and on from December. It was first, I think, November, then December, now February, and February seems uncertain. So there's an uneasy calm.
But the PDP is no different. You dragged on before you could finally get rid of the former chairman, because it appears there was the consensus toward that, but it took quite a long time before that actually happened.
Certainly it did, because there were many court issues. The former chairman, his tenure had not ended. It ended in December.
And that has been the tradition actually in the PDP, to the level of Audu Ogbe, who made the allegation that a gun was on his head to resign from the chair under President Obasanjo when you were a governor.
Yeah. You see, when you're a party in power, the president has enormous powers and authority to literally do whatever he pleases. When you're a party in opposition and there's no one with such leverage, it's more difficult to run a party that way. And that's why I give a lot of kudos to PDP, that without that level of authority where one man can say, this is what I want, as in Obasanjo, he had 4 leaders. When he felt he couldn't work with a particular one, he got him removed.
Yeah, but
now
are you supporting the way he was removing governors like you? I mean,
he never did.
He didn't remove you, but I mean, governors, your colleagues, governors.
No, let me finish what I'm saying. You have a party in authority where there is no leadership. That's my problem with the APC, right?
You are saying that Buhari is just like not there.
He has not shown leadership because, you see, every institution is a lengthened shadow of one man. If he calls the key players together and says, gentlemen, we're not leaving here until we decide on A, B, C, D. That's leadership. But to allow the party float and whiff and waff for a ruling party, that's not good enough. And that's why I said PDP is even more decisive as an opposition, where there is no singular authority that can say, guys, move into this room and we're not leaving this room until we decide on this. I'm not saying that both parties don't have issues. I'm asking, is also quantum of issues. I think APC has more than the PDP.
So does that make you hopeful that maybe you could upstage the APC in the coming election, even though people still recall your era with a lot of distaste? You kind of laid the foundation of where Nigeria is now.
People say that, but believe me, if you ask, in this republic, our finest hour was in Obasanjo's time. Our economy was at its peak. Yes, we made mistakes. Yes, we had poor leadership thereafter. Yes, we had uncertainty of governance. The Yaradua era, where ill health, the Jonathan era that was, we were literally adrift. And in Africa, opposition don't win elections. It's the party in power that loses the election. And that's what happened to PDP. They lost the elections. Now, if you take that trajectory and look at what's happening in APC today, if leadership is not, if the party and the country continues to drift, they will lose the patience and support of the people.
But is it just the party or the nation? Because aren't you concerned with what is currently happening in West Africa? So many civilian governments have been overthrown. It's almost like a repeat of the 1960s
It's disenchantment.
and all of that.
There's disenchantment everywhere. And that's why we cannot afford it in Nigeria. And therefore, we have to sit up. What is happening you see it in the smaller countries, but it's indicative, right? Because you see, West Africa is an interesting, we just migrate left, right, and center, and all that. Yes, we have borders, but who respects those borders? Now, you have coup attempts and successful coups happening. It's indicative that there's general disenchantment in the sub-region.
And why do you think it won't happen? It will never be possible in Nigeria again?
It can. I didn't say it can happen. It can happen. If we go further adrift, people don't care who is governing. They just want a better life. So whether you're wearing a uniform or you're wearing a flowing gown, it doesn't matter for them. So we mustn't take it for granted that democracy is here to stay.
But there's also the fear that if there's anything like that, it could well lead to the disintegration of the country.
If it's not managed. Remember the coup of '66. It almost, we went to a war. Millions were killed. So it can happen. And, history teaches man that man does not, man really does not learn from experience and all that. We're making the same mistakes and all that. We're taking ourselves for granted, which is the lesson of 1966. Don't take any section or anybody for granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donald Duke. I think on that rather sobering note, we come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Thank you, viewers. We've come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Goodbye.